Hello everybody and welcome back to Lost Planeswalker. You are here with me, Jesse, the Lost Planeswalker, and today we're doing Norin Swift Survivalist. This is a very cool mono-red commander deck that's going to have you casting your creatures that get blocked. So there's a lot of really cool versatility we can do there, so let's dive right in and see how Norin works. First off, Norin Swift Survivalist can't block, which makes sense because Norin here is a coward. You see him running away in this card art, so it makes a lot of sense. Secondly, whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may exile it. You may play that card from exile this turn. So Norin here is a really interesting card because first off, you want to be recasting your stuff. And secondly, you're going to be casting it from exile. So there's a lot of really cool stuff we can do. First off, we're going to look at mana generation for recasting our spells. We're going to be wanting to recast certain creatures over and over again that are going to give us continued value when they enter. Secondly, we have a lot of recast targets that we're going to want to be casting with that mana. We're going to have some really big damage coming from cards we cast from our hand and then from exile. We're going to have some stuff we're going to steal and go to our opponent's stuff. And lastly, we have the good stuff. So let's dive right in and see how this deck is going to go.
So let's dive right in and look at those mana generation for casting. Now we have a lot of mana generation or ways to ramp in this deck because we're going to be wanting to recast a lot of our cards every turn. So three really notable ones here are Birgi, God of Storytelling, Nyx Lotus, and Solemn Simulacrum. Birgi here is a creature we're going to want to keep on the board because whenever we cast a spell, you can tap it to add a red, and until end of turn, you don't lose this mana as steps and phases end. And creatures you control can boast twice during the turn. We really aren't going to be worrying about that second part, but whenever we cast stuff, we're going to get more red mana to then cast it later on, and it won't just go away. The other side of Birgi here is Harnfell, Horn of Bounty, that lets us discard a card, exile the top two cards of our library, and play those cards this turn, which we're less interested in than just the free mana that we can then use during our second main phase. Nyx Lotus is 4 generic legendary artifact that enters tapped, but you choose a color and add an amount of mana equal to your devotion to that color. This is a mono red deck. We have a lot of permanents that we're going to have onto the battlefield, so we're going to be able to generate a lot of red mana from this. And then Solemn Simulacrum, 4 generic artifact creature golem. Whenever Solemn Simulacrum enters, search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, tap it, then shuffle, and then when it dies, you may draw a card. This is a great creature that we're going to want to cast over and over again, letting us search our library multiple times and putting those lands on the battlefield, ramping us every turn, basically allowing us to play 2 lands every turn, which is a really, really cool ability. Some other great mana generation for casting we have as Arcane Signet, Big Score, Caged Sun, Cloud Key, Cursed Mirror, Gauntlet of Power, Glimpse the Impossible, Guild Artisan, Jessica's Will, Mana Geyser, Neheb the Eternal, Ruby Medallion, Seething Song, Seize the Spotlight, Soul Ring, Thought Vessel, Thran Dynamo, Throne of Eldraine, Unexpected Windfall, and Wayfarer's Bauble. Moving right along, we have some great recast targets that I want to talk about because it's going to be the core of this deck. So we have Fanatic of Mogis, Star Athlete, and Sunspine Lynx. I've never seen Fanatic of Mogis before, but I've seen it recently in a couple of decks because it looks very, very good. But for 3 and a red, you get a creature Minotaur Shaman that whenever this enters the battlefield, it deals damage to each opponent equal to your devotion to red. Like I already mentioned with Nyx Lotus, we're going to be wanting to recast a bunch of our things, and our devotion is going to be very high. So this is going to ping our opponents for a lot of damage, meaning we're going to want to recast it as many times as possible. Star Athlete is a new card from the Duskmourn commander decks that has menace, and when it attacks, you can choose up to 1 non-land permanent. Its controller may sacrifice it. If they don't, Star Athlete deals 5 damage to that player. This is a really cool card that lets us target any non-land permanent they control and potentially remove it unless they take damage. Repeating this ability over and over again may lead them to have to block this and or start sacrificing their permanents. And then Sunspine Lynx is 2 red. Players can't gain life. Damage can't be prevented, and whenever this enters, it deals damage to each player equal to the number of non-basic lands that player controls. We're going to be playing a lot of basic mountains in this deck, and most likely our opponents are going to be playing a lot of non-basics, so if we can repeat this effect over and over again, we're going to be able to ping the board down with a lot of damage. Some other great recast targets are Agate Instigator, Circuit Mender, Bustable Gearhole, Nemesis Mask, Ragavan's Nimble Pilferer, Taunting Kobold, and Zealous Conscripts.
Now, before we get into those cards that are going to give us some advantage when we recast it, I just want to say, please consider subscribing to my channel. It would mean the world to me. Leaving a like would be a great help. And if you really like the content I make and want to support me in a different way, I just started a Patreon. And whether or not you want to support me there, it is the place where I'm going to be trying to get my audience involved with my channel, asking questions, and just trying to get the best Magic the Gathering content I can. You know, and a lot of that is going to be, what do you guys want to see? Because I like videos that I make, but if you have some ideas, please, let me know there. It's where I'm going to be trying to do all that. So let's dive right in and look at those cards we want to cast from our hand and then again from exile.
Now looking back at some cards that we want to be casting and cast from exile, we have casting our spells equal damage with Molten Gatekeeper, Perforos, God of the Forge, and Terror of the Peaks. Molten Gatekeeper is 2 and a red artifact creature golem with whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, Molten Gatekeeper deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you may unearth it for a single red, allowing you to bring this back maybe at the end of the game to get a few more pings in to hopefully knock everybody out. Perforos, God of the Forge, great card, staple card, 3 and a red, indestructible. As long as your devotion's red is less than 5, Perforos isn't a creature. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, this deals 2 damage to opponent, and you can use this to buff up your creatures, giving them +1/+0 for 2 and a red until end of turn. And then of course, Terror of the Peaks, another staple card that has crept back up to $20 here, but 3 red creature dragon with flying, spells your opponents cast that target Terror of the Peaks cost an additional 3 life to cast. Then whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to target. A big threat when a lot of the things we're casting are pretty sizable or cheap enough that we can cast it over and over and get a lot of good triggers. But another way we want to be doing this is because Norin is going to be putting those cards into exile, is taking advantage of casting stuff from exile. So we have Flaming Tyrannosaurus, Keeper of Secrets, and Passionate Archaeologist. Flaming Tyrannosaurus is 5 red creature dinosaur with menace and paradox. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, Flaming Tyrannosaurus deals 3 damage to any target, then put a +1/+1 counter on Flaming Tyrannosaurus. Then when Flaming Tyrannosaurus dies, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. We're going to be doing this possibly multiple times every turn, making this a very big threat that could just knock somebody out if it gets removed. Keeper of Secrets, 5 and a red, is a creature demon with flying and haste, and it has Symphony of Pain. Whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, this deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent, which is very similar to Passionate Archaeologist, which is a background for the Battle of Baldur's Gate set, but for 1 and a red, commander creatures you own have whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to its spell's mana value to target opponent. If we have both of these on the board, we're going to be able to ping down an opponent over and over, dealing a ton of damage to them. I've been knocked out with these 2 cards multiple times. They add up very quickly. Some other great cards are Charred Foray and Warped Space, Impact Tremors, Irax, Empress of Mars, Nefelshni, Wild Magic Sorcerer, and Witty Roastmaster. One of the other interesting aspects of this deck that I think is quite neat is the steal effects. Now, typically, when you're stealing or goading creatures, you're stealing them to take and hit their opponents with. Now, in this case, if they decide to choose those creatures you steal to block with, they go into exile, which is a really unique way to remove those creatures from the game without you having to have any additional sacrifice outlets or other pieces letting you do so. So I think that this is a very interesting way to build around this deck. And some great cards are Active Aggression, Call for Aid, and Mob Rule. Active Aggression is 3 Phyrexian red for an instant that says gain control of target creature and opponent controls until end of turn. Untap the creature, it gains haste until end of turn. One of my favorite things about this being a instant here is that you can steal a creature that your opponent's going to swing at you with before they have the chance to, and then they can't hit you that turn, or you can just steal it at instant speed, which is very good. Call for Aid, 4 and a red sorcery, gain control of all creatures target opponent controls until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. You can't attack that player this turn. You can't sack those creatures this turn. Great. We're not worried about sacrificing them, and we're going to be able to swing out at somebody else, and if they decide to block, we can just exile our other opponent's board very efficiently. And then Mob Rule, 4 red sorcery, choose 1, gain control of all creatures with power 4 or greater until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn, or gain control of all creatures with power 3 or less until end of turn. Untap those creatures, they gain haste until end of turn. Very similar, we can gain control of all creatures of a certain power, swing out at our opponents, and if they don't want to block, they're going to lose their own stuff, which is very mean. Some other great steal and goad cards are Captivating Crew, Disrupt Discorum, Traitorous Blood, and Word of Seizing. Now, of course, we have the good stuff as always, and I think that there's some really unique cards, especially some new ones that we received that I think are pretty good here with Enduring Courage, Heatstroke, and Untimely Malfunction. Enduring Courage is 2 red enchantment creature Dog Glimmer that when another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste until end of turn. This is going to allow us to attack immediately with the creatures we cast. In addition, if this were to die, then it returns to the battlefield as an enchantment. What a great card. I think that this is one of the cheaper Glimmers, but I think its effect is actually quite powerful and is definitely going to see a lot of play. Heatstroke here is 2 and a red enchantment. At the beginning of each combat, destroy all creatures that blocked or were blocked to this turn. So now our opponents are maybe incentivized to block because they're going to die unless they block, but if they do, our creature is going to get exiled, meaning that this won't matter, and that their creatures are then going to be destroyed, which I think is a really cool effect, and this card seems particularly good in this deck. And then Untimely Malfunction, 1 and a red instant, choose 1, destroy target artifact, change the target spell or ability with a single target, or 1 or 2 targets can't block this turn. I think that this is a very powerful card. It's going to let you do a lot of things, just like a Braid. I think that's a very good card because of its flexibility, and I really like Untimely Malfunction. So looking at the rest of that good stuff, we have a Braid, Blasphemous Act, Chain Reaction, Chaos Warp, City on Fire, Close Quarters, Rising of the Day, and Sword of the Animist. As always, the land base is up to you. I know that there are notably some really good cards that give your creatures haste immediately, so that might be something you want to add to your land base, but I think just having mountains actually isn't so bad. We want to have as much mana as possible every turn. We have a lot of mana generation, but having as much red available to us immediately is going to be very powerful as well.
Thank you so much for watching. There is Norin, Swift Survivalist. I hope you enjoyed this deck. I think it was really cool. Leave a comment down below what you think. Are there some certain cards that you would think would work really well in this deck? Or is there a whole other play strategy that I didn't even touch on that Norin would be perfect for? In addition, if you'd please leave a like, share this video with a friend, and subscribe, that would mean the world to me, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Now today's Scryfall card of the day is Lava Coil. Commander, we caught the Dimir spy and took her ashes into custody. Karam Wojak, Security Officer. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll see you later, Planeswalkers.